Well, early on at the beginning of the show, we told you about a conversation that we had with the British High Commissioner. And, well, Ian Walker spoke to Kojo Yankson, and he's about to embark on an adventure. I don't have to tell you all that. Kojo Yankson will do the intro, and then you get to know what the details of the conversations are. It's all right up.
If I could describe those who have in recent times held the position of British High Commissioner to Ghana with one word, I'd probably choose the word memorable. Ian Walker, the current holder of this position, is just about to do the one thing that is probably going to put his name down as a memorable envoy of the British Empire to Ghana. And of course, he's doing this for a very good cause. Let's find out a bit more about the Ghana Grand and why Ian Walker is going to be peddling his way across the nation. Ian, nice to see you.
Kojo, welcome.
Thank you. The Ghana Grand. Let's start from there, first of all. It's a catchy name, very memorable, but what exactly is it about?
So the Ghana Grand is a 1,000-kilometre cycle from the north of Ghana down back to Accra. And the idea, I think, stemmed from this sense of the risk, I suppose, as a diplomat or someone in any kind of public position, that you can often appear to be detached. And it bothers me, because I think I am, as I do in my normal life, I'm very accessible, I speak to people all the time. But sometimes it's the kind of perceptions of your role that get in the way. And sometimes it's the 4x4 that you're sitting in, or the aeroplane out the window through which you look that you see the country. And I thought, no, I want to do something different. I want to kind of see people in their communities, and I want to be able to cover some ground as we're going. And I thought, what better way to do that than by bicycle? So we're going to cycle 1,000 kilometres and meet people on the way. And the intention really is to, I think, have different conversations, hear different voices, and see Ghana and see bits of Ghana that I've not seen.
When are you doing this?
In August.
Right. Okay, so we've got about a month of preparation.
Exactly.
Speaking of preparation, how do you prepare to ride 1,000 kilometers?
Well, I try and keep relatively fit. So I run quite often, I swim quite often, and on Sundays when the roads are quieter, I try and get out for a cycle. But I've never cycled 1,000 kilometres before, so this is a big challenge. I'm under no illusions, I'm not a professional cyclist, but in many ways that was part of the appeal. I thought, I'm keen to do something that's challenging, that's different, and I think that's one of the bits of the aim of this, actually, which is to encourage other people to take on challenges or take on things that they think they can't do, whether in their professional life or in their private life, whatever that is, and just face down things and see how you get on. And I'm pretty keen to make sure that we cover the ground fully, and I'm confident we will.
Now there's an aim to this, right? There's an objective. You're not just trying to burn lactic acid the most difficult way possible, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, so I think there's three main things that I think this is about. First is about health. You know, you've touched on that. How do you make sure that you look after your own health? First of all, I think much of the conversation in Ghana I hear is about Ghana moving beyond aid. And I can see a lot of the economic side of that as we talk about more investment. Is something we've talked about before. But as Ghana moves beyond aid, clearly a lot needs to change in terms of things like education, and we can see that through free SHS and such like. I think also in health really matters. Without your health, you can't learn. Without your health, you can't work. And I think that comes down to not just what the government do, but what individuals do and how they look after themselves. So as part of this trip, we're going to be reaching out to many of the hospitals with whom we partner, the health centres with whom we partner, and hopefully many others. We're working with many people in the diaspora from UK and Ghana who work in the medical services, to talk to them and understand what's going on in the health service and get closer to some of the things that they are dealing with. So health is definitely one. A second part of this is really, I think my experience of Ghana is a country that is a beautiful country, fantastic people, hugely welcoming, and such a kind of diverse cultural mix in all the different areas that I've been. And I want to tell my part of the story of that, including to a UK audience through this. So part of this is about kind of tourism in that sense of telling the story of the country, and also about trying to get ahead of some of the environmental challenges that not just Ghana but we all face, whether that's around kind of water, whether around plastic. So I want to kind of think and talk to people about tourism and the natural environments. And then thirdly, as I've touched on, I think it's about challenging yourself. So those are the three aims, and in truth of the three, the one that's in my head at the most just now is challenging yourself, because you say it's not long away, so lots to do.
Yeah, well now you're also doing this for a cause, aren't you? Tell me about that.
So yeah, we're going to, so when I spoke to people about saying this was the plan, they said, well, why don't you raise some money? And my initial thought was, well, I would do that in the UK, but I'm mindful Ghana's moving beyond aid. I didn't want to kind of get into, a kind of a political question about raising charitable money. But I thought, actually, people are right. There's people do want to kind of support us on this, and I've got many people in Ghana who have donated some monies, and so too in the UK. We're obviously covering all the costs for this ourselves, but the money we raise is going to go to the plastic surgery and burns units at Corlebu Hospital. And the reason for that is twofold. One, I think Corlebu is a fantastic hospital, some brilliant people working down there. And what I like about it is it's not just about Accra. The plastics surgery and burns unit has an outreach as a small unit in Kumasi, and does outreach programs into Wa and many other kind of places. So that's, I think, one of the important bits. And secondly, again, it's about whatever money I raise will be token. Yeah. But I think when we think about burns, much of it is actually, when I talk to the medical people here and elsewhere, we often talk about malaria as a big challenge, and I think 400,000 people a year die from malaria in Africa each year. 300,000 die from burns, and often that's because of kind of faulty gas canisters, or people perhaps not being aware of the risk of the smell of gas and the kind of impact that can have if you just light a naked flame. Things that sound perhaps very simple, but we've got to get that message out there, because there's 300,000 people a year dying from this. It's so needless, and there is a shortage of plastic surgeons here in Ghana and around the region. And I think I want to have a conversation about that, about, a lot of this is about public awareness as much as it is about medical treatment. And the centre in Accra is truly world class, and they are now training plastic surgeons from Sierra Leone, from Cameroon, and from many places too. So I think it's a combination of things, but it to me tells a bit of a story of, Ghana has got a great story to tell here about how it's teaching across the region, but there's so much more to do, and that's not just for doctors to do, but for all of us.
Now let's talk about the feat itself. 1,000 kilometers. It's going to take you how many days to do this?
10 days, I think. Yeah.
10 days.
Yeah.
Wow. So about 100 kilometers a day.
Yeah.
Wow, that's gruesome.
That's the plan. So I think we've actually got a rest day as well. So it's probably more like 120 roughly a day. So I think. But yeah, I think it will be. We're going to try and set off early each morning. Make sure we kind of, before the sun. It's only mad dogs and Englishmen, I think, that cycle in the midday sun. So we'll try and avoid the midday as much as possible and get out early and later in the day. And we'll do meet, as I said, as many people as possible on the route.
So I guess you've planned your stops along the way. Is there anything strategic about the stops? Do you intend to do anything in particular at any of your stops as part of the?
So we've got a range of things that we have planned. We'll be going to places of worship. We'll be going to schools. We'll be going to health centres along the way. We'll be going to see a mental health hospital along the way that we are working with en route. But we'll do more than that. I think we will go and see some of the tourist sites that are here in Ghana as well. So, the last part of the trip we'll be coming down to the Volta region. We certainly plan to be climbing Mount Afajato and also going to see Vlee Falls, for example. So we want to try and make sure we build in a bit of the true kind of experience as well as reaching out and meeting and seeing people along the way. So that's the plan.
You've made the point of how beautiful Ghana is, and it's good of you to notice. Of course, you're going to see a lot of it on this ride. You'll be capturing a lot of it and putting it out on social media and so forth. Is there a strategy, a deliberate purpose of highlighting Ghana as a tourist destination to the people of Britain?
Yeah, well, for me there is actually. So I do find that kind of words get in the way sometimes. So we talk about tourism and we often think about people flying in and coming on holiday, and of course that's what we're talking about. But for me there's a step that comes before people choosing to come to Ghana on holiday, and it's people understanding what Ghana is. And I think, many people are talking about this now, and they're right, which is we need to shift the narrative, and not just a few people talking about it, but everybody, not doing it with a kind of a sense of, trying to kind of feel like we have to do it, but because it's true. And it's that when people still, in many places around the world, their first connotation of what's happening in Africa more broadly, it can often be less positive impressions, and we all know this, and we all know that it's completely unjustified. Anyone that's been to Ghana, anyone that's travelled around Africa knows that there's a very different experience here. There's a place of ambition, it's a place of hope, it's a place of growing prosperity, and it's a place where people have real ambition, I think, and the continent is changing. I'm really clear about that. And that for me is the kind of first step that comes before tourism, because we've got to make people understand that you don't just necessarily want to go and visit somewhere because of a particularly large monument. You go to somewhere because you want to feel welcome, and there's not many places you can feel more welcome, I think, than Ghana, is my experience.
Yeah. Now, you're a diplomat, so naturally you work to enhance the desires of your nation, and to push the policy initiatives of the United Kingdom. So is there some of that going on here? Is there some sort of policy objective of the UK government that you're hoping that the Ghana Grant will help you to achieve?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think in terms of what, I think something I hope I've been pretty consistent on since I arrived, is that it feels to me that between the UK and Ghana, the relationship is warm in so many different ways. The connections, people to people, are many and varied. The biggest risk I've constantly felt that we have is complacency. I think there's a big risk that Ghana thinks the UK will always be there, the UK always thinks that Ghana will be there. And I think that, like any relationship, it's about what you put in is what you get out. So I think for me, a lot of this, not necessarily just about the Ghana Grant, but I think the thing that gets me up in the morning is that we mustn't ever take each other for granted. And that applies in every domain that we engage with. But fundamentally, it's about understanding each other. Fundamentally, it's about understanding that Ghana's changing. In the UK, we need to understand that Ghana is changing, and it is changing. In Ghana, it's helpful for Ghana to understand that the UK is changing too. So I was just in Kumasi today, actually, earlier today, and we were talking again about investment and regional investments. And one of the themes that I think we kept coming to was we were aiming for the same thing, but not quite getting the language right. So how are we making sure that, for example, when we talk about aid, Ghana's moving beyond aid. The UK is committed to 0.7% of its budget, so its annual income, being spent on development, on aid. That's not 0.7% on kind of handouts and giveaways. That's increasingly about putting capital into businesses, dealing with some of the structural, longer-term challenges. So in Kumasi, we were talking about things like waste to energy. We were talking about affordable housing. When we talk about development now, those are the things that we're talking about development. We want to attract more private sector participation. How can we use things like development finance to attract other investors into that kind of space? So I say that as an example of something we're aiming for, the same thing we need to kind of and make sure we're talking a kind of common aim. So to link that back to the Ghana Grant, I think it's about saying, do you know what, I don't just sit in a 4x4 with a flag on my car. I'm a pretty normal guy, I hope, and so are my team. And we want to talk about these things, and fundamentally it's about conversations. Until we understand each other, we're going to struggle to do an awful lot more. So let's kind of double down on understanding the drivers, what's there, and speak to each other. And then I think that we can do a lot more in our future than perhaps we've done in the past.
Well, it's certainly an aspiration I hope this helps you to achieve. So Ian, I understand that you'll be doing some of the riding on a bamboo bike, is that right?
It's right, yeah. So one of the great things I saw in Ghana not long after I arrived was the guys that made bamboo bikes up near Kumasi. I had never in my life seen before a bike made of bamboo. And I just think it's amazing. So here's a company, when you talk about innovation, here's a company who has created a factory just outside Kumasi, growing bamboo. It grows super quick. They make the frames out of bamboo. They've employed scores of people up there now, and they've now made what I think is a really innovative and distinctive product. And they're now selling that product in the UK. I think they're selling it elsewhere in Europe. And I'm not sure if they've yet got to the US, but I know they've been looking at it. And I just think, crikey, that's brilliant, you know. So, you know, part of this, as I said, is about connecting, and I think doing it on a bamboo bike feels fitting, and it just adds a sense of, yeah, something a bit different as well. So we're looking forward to it. But when I say we, actually, this is much more about you than it is me, because I'm wondering how you'll get on a bamboo bike.
Well, I'll tell you what, we can find out now, because I confess I've never seen a bamboo bike myself either. So can we check it out? Can you show it to me?
You can check it out as part of your preparations for Ghana Grand. That means you're going to cycle.
Let's see it.
Right, nice one. Wow. So it's the frame that's made of bamboo.
Right.
And they've...
Wow.
So it's pretty cool, right? So they kind of, the whole, I mean, and they've got lots of different designs.
They've properly polished it as well. I mean, different shapes.
Different styles, different... but, I mean, look at the handiwork of it. It's brilliant.
Yes,
So,
some solid work.
but so these bikes are selling now in... I've seen them in London on sale. And there's, you know, London's full of trendy people, and I mean, if you want something distinctive, class, cracking.
Yeah, it really sort of matches the sort of eco-warrior type image that many people are going for these days.
Exactly.
That's wonderful.
Exactly. Great.
Now, I mean, let me ask you this, because as we talk about the eco-warrior image, I'm quite acutely aware of the fact that even culturally, here in Ghana, there is a certain expectation of people in an office as high as yours, that you would, you know, be in the 4x4 and, you know, be driven around, and we treat our leaders with a lot of reverence and give them all the luxuries they want. And, you know, recently there's this debate going on about parliamentarians wanting to build a new chamber and all that. But very often we draw the distinction between how our leaders operate and how leaders of other countries, including countries like the UK, on which we have in the past relied heavily on for aid, how their leaders are. And it wouldn't be unusual to see a British Prime Minister riding a bike.
Well, yeah.
Not the same here. I wonder whether that strikes you in any way.
So I think, I mean, I know what you mean. I think that, I think it's different. I think it's very different when you're head of state. So it would be unusual, I would say, to see a Prime Minister cycling. They might do, like, they might cycle from point to point. They might do it in their private lives. In fact, you know, Jeremy Hunt, the Foreign Secretary, is a keen cyclist and a keen runner. Boris Johnson, when he was here, our current Foreign Secretary, they're the two people for Prime Minister. They're both kind of keen on this kind of stuff. Boris Johnson, I think, cycled a bike in this very residence just a couple of years ago. But I think when you're head of state, I guess there's certain security sits around that kind of does change your what was previously your private life to your public life. And in the UK, I would say Prime Ministers, they struggle to kind of cycle from point to point, but parliamentarians do. There's a huge number of people in the UK Parliament who do cycle to work, and certainly when I work in London, I cycle to work. That's what I do, and I live about 12 miles away from my place of work. I cycle every day into work, and I would cycle back home. So I think, you know, I think it's horses for courses. People do things in different ways, but I think that, well, I think in London just now, and I can talk about that relatively well, the culture of cycling is taking over, and it's because I would say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was a status symbol to have a car. In Ghana, I see people out cycling. People said to me, "You're cycling in a cra, are you crazy?" And you know what? It's not. It's been fine. I mean, touch wood. It's been fine. You know, I think that drivers have been okay. Actually, it's not been nearly as bad as I might have feared, or people might have feared on my behalf. So yeah, get on a bike. It's cheaper. I mean, I'm a Scotsman, so I like to be frugal, and cycling to work is a lot cheaper for me than getting a car or a bus.
So do you reckon perhaps Ghana might be just about 30 or 40 years, you know, away from that sort of culture that is taking over in London?
I mean, I don't know. So for me, there's lots of things that Ghana is actually just jumping ahead of. It's not about catching up. I just don't see it as being about Ghana catching up with the UK. It's jumping ahead in many areas. So if you think of like telecoms, in the UK you had fixed line telecoms for ages, then there was mobiles. Ghana's leapfrogged that, and now the kind of the mobile networks. You do so much more on your mobile networks than we do in the UK. And I just wonder, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I just wonder that now we as a world know the damage that, pollution is kind of causing, and we know that actually it's possible to kind of have other means of transport. I just wonder, maybe, do things change in a way that says you look at Lagos and you can't drive in Lagos? Yeah. Is that what you want to have here, or are there other ways of getting people around, transport around that's kind of, as I say, much cheaper, so you can spend your money on other things? But these are questions for people of Ghana, not questions for me.
Indeed. Well, if this is our future, then I want to try it out now. So
yeah.
Can we take a ride?
Yeah,
is that yours?
Whichever one, I don't mind. Let's.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take the ladies
either one is fine. So you wearing this way? Right.
Yeah. Right then.
We should have our helmets on. This is our one exception.
Oh yes, because we're indoors, right? This is pretty high up.
Oh, hold on, my chain's off. Right. So.
Wow. This is pretty high up. Well, it's a pretty healthy way to get around the city if you know how to ride. But it's not just the city that Ian Walker will be getting around. He will be getting around the country, 1,000 kilometers on a bike, all for a good cause and also to showcase the beauty of Ghana. And I have no doubt you'll be riding with him every step of the way as he brings you images and sights and sounds of our beautiful nation.